Riker's walking right up Fifth Avenue.
Swinging through the heart of New York City, Peter Parker isn't just battling supervillains. He's fighting to keep his life from unraveling. Marvel's Spider-Man isn't just about epic action. It's a story of sacrifice, heartbreak, and what it truly means to be a hero. From iconic showdowns with the Sinister Six to impossible choices that define his legacy, this game takes us on a journey that's as emotional as it is exhilarating. And it's not just Peter's story. This is about the people who shape him, the city he loves, and the web of secrets threatening to tear it all apart. Get ready as we break down the full story, from the gripping battles to the unforgettable moments. This is Marvel's Spider-Man, the story behind the mask.
Who can make the hardest decisions?
Let's dive in. The story begins with Peter Parker fast asleep in his cozy but cluttered apartment. His phone buzzes loudly, pulling him from his dreams.
All units, level 4 mobilization. Location, Fisk Tower.
The camera glides across the room, revealing little pieces of Peter's life. Photos with Aunt May, Uncle Ben, Mary Jane, and Harry Osborn. Newspapers from the Daily Bugle. Sketches of his Spider-Man suit upgrades. And a pile of overdue bills showing he's behind on rent. Suddenly, a police dispatch crackles through the phone, and Peter springs into action.
All units, level 4 mobilization. Location, Fisk Tower.
Fisk?
He suits up in his iconic red and blue Spider-Man outfit and leaps out the window, swinging into the city as the sun rises over New York. As Spider-Man swings through the bustling streets, Yuri Watanabe, a police captain, calls him over the comms. Her team is at Fisk Tower, preparing a raid, but she needs Spider-Man's help at Times Square. Before he can respond, his other job as Peter Parker interrupts.
Parker, where are you? We must run through the demonstration at least once before the grant committee arrives.
Yes. Sorry.
His boss, Doctor Octopus, needs him for a last-minute demonstration. Torn between his responsibilities, Peter prioritizes the urgent police call. At Times Square, chaos erupts. Police officers take cover behind their cars as Fisk's armed men fire relentlessly. A tanker truck barrels onto the scene, exploding in a fiery blast. Just as it seems, the thugs have the upper hand. Spider-Man swoops in, disarming them with precision.
Be there soon. Wait to see Willie's face when you slap Kitty.
After ensuring the officers are safe, he's alerted to more trouble at Fisk Tower. Arriving at the tower, Spider-Man joins Yuri, who's pinned down by heavy gunfire. Swinging into action, he disables Fisk's men outside, then infiltrates the building. Inside, Spider-Man faces waves of thugs, navigating the chaos as Yuri updates him about a server room where critical data is being erased. On the way, Aunt May calls, but Peter quickly reassures her he's fine before diving back into the fight. In the server room, Spider-Man halts the data purge, only to be confronted by Fisk himself. After taunting Spider-Man, Fisk sends more henchmen, but Spider-Man overcomes them. The confrontation escalates as Spider-Man battles Fisk, dodging punches and turrets until he finally webs up the Kingpin, leaving him for the police.
So, we kiss now?
With Kingpin arrested, Peter is reminded of his day job. At Octavius Industries, he helps Otto recover from a near disaster during their demonstration for the grant committee. Despite Peter's efforts, the committee leaves unimpressed. Later, Peter repairs a damaged prosthetic arm while Otto steps out for dinner. Returning to his Spider-Man duties, Peter receives a call from Yuri about damaged surveillance towers. While fixing the towers, Spider-Man humorously adopts the persona of Spider Cop, narrating his actions in a gruff voice, much to Yuri's annoyance. Along the way, he prevents a break-in, rescues a hostage, and even discovers an old backpack from his high school days, filled with memories. Back at the lab, Peter works on repairing his suit when Otto unexpectedly returns. To Peter's relief, Otto assumes Peter designed Spider-Man's tech and praises his altruism. Inspired by Otto's notes, Peter crafts a sleek new advanced suit, ready for whatever challenges come next. Peter's next stop is VAST, a shelter run by Martin Lee, where Aunt May volunteers. On his way, his landlord warns him about overdue rent. At the shelter, Peter distracts Aunt May while the staff surprises her with a thank you cake. Afterward, Martin Lee suggests May visit City Hall to discuss her community work. As Peter leaves, he receives a new lead from Yuri, signaling the beginning of his next adventure. Spider-Man was at the FEAST shelter when he got a call from Yuri Watanabe. A silent alarm had gone off at Wilson Fisk's estate, and she needed him to check it out. Peter quickly swung into action. On his way, Aunt May called to thank him for his kind words earlier, which made her day. At the estate, Spider-Man sneaked in through a rooftop vent. Inside, he spotted a group of masked thugs holding a woman hostage. He called Yuri to let her know about the heist and started taking out the thugs quietly, one by one, to avoid endangering the hostage. While inspecting a security camera, he let his guard down, and a thug tried to ambush him. But Mary Jane Watson appeared out of nowhere and knocked the thug out cold. MJ quickly explained how she got there. 15 minutes earlier, she had posed as a reporter to gain access to Fisk's art collection. She tricked Rose Roseman, Fisk's associate, into letting her in by faking a phone call about a scheduling mix-up. As MJ explored, she took photos of Fisk's art and asked Roseman probing questions about shady art deals and money laundering. This irritated Roseman, who stepped out to take a call, giving MJ a chance to snoop around. MJ discovered a secret file about Norman Osborn and something called Devil's Breath. Before she could leave, the thugs arrived, targeting the file. Spider-Man listened to her story, then told her to hide as he took out more thugs. But MJ was caught while trying to escape, forcing Spider-Man to swoop in and save her and Roseman. The thugs wielded strange, energy-powered weapons, which Spider-Man noted as odd. After the fight, Roseman confronted MJ for lying about her credentials. MJ revealed she worked for the Daily Bugle and tried asking more questions, but Roseman brushed her off. Later, Peter texted MJ, asking her to meet for dinner. She hesitated, but agreed. At Mick's diner, Peter and MJ caught up. MJ joked about likely facing her legal team after her stunt, while Peter talked about his work with Doctor Otto Octavius and how it could save lives. The conversation got awkward when their breakup came up, but before they could unpack it, sirens blared, and Peter had to leave. As he swung away, the diner's cook, Stan Lee, called them his favorites. Yuri called Spider-Man again. Herman Schultz, the Shocker, had broken parole and was on the loose. On the way to stop him, Peter got a call from Dr. Octavius, who was worried about Spider-Man's tech being traced back to their lab. Peter reassured him, and Otto praised Spider-Man for staying true to his mission, despite critics like J. Jonah Jameson. Spider-Man caught up to Shocker outside a bank, leading to a wild chase through the city. During the pursuit, Spider-Man grilled Shocker about why he was stealing money, suspecting he was working for someone bigger. Shocker refused to talk, clearly scared of whoever was pulling the strings. Spider-Man eventually caught him and handed him over to the police. MJ called Peter, asking him to learn more about a strange mask they found at Fisk's estate. Peter visited Martin Lee at the FEAST shelter, who recognized the symbol on the mask. It belonged to a group called the Demons, and Lee warned Peter that they were dangerous. He also urged Peter to steer MJ away from investigating further, but MJ wouldn't let it go. Meanwhile, Peter's day got worse when Norman Osborn shut down Otto Octavius' lab, citing safety violations. Otto accused Osborn of abusing his power, hinting at a long-standing feud between them. With no funding left, Otto told Peter he couldn't afford to keep him on staff. Peter left, frustrated, and thought about asking Harry Osborn for help. Instead, he remembered Harry's research stations around the city and decided to use them to help the public, honoring Harry's late mother's vision. After helping at one of Harry's stations, Spider-Man got another call from Yuri. Shocker had escaped police custody thanks to a corrupt guard, and was robbing another bank. As Spider-Man raced to stop him, MJ called to share her findings. The inner demons were rising to fill the power vacuum left by Fisk's arrest. Spider-Man confronted Shocker at the bank, leading to an intense battle. During the fight, Shocker admitted he was working for the inner demons under duress. His fear of them was clear, confirming how dangerous they were. After defeating Shocker, Spider-Man called Yuri to report what he'd learned. Shocker was sent to the raft, but Spider-Man couldn't shake the feeling that the inner demons were just the tip of the iceberg. Yuriko Watanabe called Spider-Man with troubling news. The inner demons were targeting Wilson Fisk's properties. Spider-Man suggested they get ahead of the attacks, prompting Yuri to direct him to a shipyard under high surveillance. To assist, she sent Officer Jefferson Davis, a veteran investigator of Fisk's operations. When Spider-Man arrived, Fisk's snipers were guarding the equipment. He swiftly neutralized them before meeting Davis. With a warrant in hand, Davis was ready to go in, but Spider-Man opted for a stealthier approach. He sneaked in through a back entrance, unlocking the door for Davis from the inside. Davis handed Spider-Man a stun gun, which Peter quickly modified into an electric web to power a junction box. Inside the warehouse, the two uncovered a hidden passage leading to a vault. Within the vault, signs of a smash and grab revealed what the demons had stolen. Lethal weapons like assault rifles and RPGs, leaving behind only non-lethal gear. One of the demons' vans escaped, but Spider-Man chased down the other. After a chaotic pursuit, he stopped the van from colliding with a subway train, saving countless lives. When the final demon tried to attack, Davis intervened, taking him down but getting injured in the process. As paramedics arrived, Mary Jane Watson persuaded Davis to share his story. She joined him in the ambulance, determined to publish the truth. Peter returned home to find an eviction notice on his door. With no choice but to track down his belongings, he called sanitation to locate the dumpster holding his things. His priority was a USB drive containing his Spider-Man schematics. At the dump site, Peter encountered thugs harassing a worker. After saving him, the worker allowed Peter to sift through the trash until he recovered the USB. With the schematics, Peter crafted a new gadget, the web bomb, testing it in his next fight. That night, Peter considered asking MJ for a place to stay, but changed his mind after seeing her article about Jefferson Davis go live. He decided not to interrupt her work. Spider-Man received a taunting call from Black Cat, inviting him to a specific location. When he arrived, he found a tape recorder and a camera focused on one of her Black Cat RFID harvesters. Realizing she was back in the game, Spider-Man alerted Yuri. Exhausted, Peter crashed on a couch at the FEAST shelter. The next morning, Aunt May handed him some cash, insisting he accept her help. She reminded him that sometimes pride must be set aside, just like Uncle Ben would have done. Martin Lee interrupted their conversation to announce he was leaving town and placing May in charge. Shortly after, MJ called Peter, inviting him to a ceremony honoring Jefferson Davis. At a Fisk construction site, Spider-Man discovered the demons eliminating Fisk's men and taking control. After saving the remaining workers, Spider-Man confiscated a phone and called Fisk. Reluctantly, Fisk shared that the demon's leader could be found on the rooftop. Spider-Man reached the roof just as the leader boarded a helicopter. A high-stakes chase ensued across the city, with Spider-Man webbing a container to the helicopter to slow it down. The chase caused chaos, but Spider-Man eventually disabled the helicopter, preventing it from crashing. On the ground, Miles Morales, Jefferson Davis's son, recorded the spectacle on his phone, his text revealing the connection to his father. At the ceremony honoring Jefferson Davis, Peter and MJ joined the crowd as Davis took the stage with his family. Mayor Norman Osborn presented the medal, but was called away by a mysterious phone call. The caller warned Osborn that something terrible was about to happen, promising to make him suffer. As Jefferson delivered his speech, Peter's spider sense flared. The inner demons, led by Martin Lee, surrounded the pavilion. Using their negative powers, they revealed themselves, with some strapped to explosive vests. Chaos erupted when one demon detonated his bomb on the crowd's edge. Another, disguised as the deputy mayor, attempted to do the same on stage, but Jefferson tackled him, sacrificing himself to save others. In the aftermath, Miles searched for his parents amid the destruction. He found his mother trapped under debris and freed her before pressing further into the wreckage. He eventually found his father, lifeless at the podium.
Dad! Dad, no!
A week later, Jefferson Davis's funeral brought together his family. Peter, MJ, Yuri, and even Norman Osborn. Miles, overcome with grief, remained distant as Peter tried to offer comfort. The loss weighed heavily on everyone, but for Miles, it marked a turning point in his life, one that would shape his path forever. Mary Jane Watson calls Peter Parker with a lead.
I'm busy. What's up?
Have you started looking for Martin Lee yet?
No, I told you I can't start a manhunt based on a hunch from Spider-Man.
But I'm telling you, he's the guy. And that
Martin Lee owns a recycling business with suspicious ties. She shares that arrested inner demons claim Lee brings out people's negative sides, making them act against their nature. Spider-Man investigates the business and uncovers a map targeting Norman Osborn's campaign offices, weapons, explosives, and blueprints for truck bombs. He traces the next hideout and clears out the demons at Consolidated Shipping. Inside, he finds maps of demon warehouses and more evidence. After defeating more demons, Sable International arrives. Silver Sable herself appears, capturing Spider-Man with trap gadgets. Luckily, Captain Yuriko Watanabe intervenes, ordering his release. She explains Sable was hired by Osborn for protection. Meanwhile, Peter suggests Aunt May hire Miles Morales at FEAST. Later, Peter sneaks into Lee's office, finding a heartfelt letter to Aunt May and Lee's journal, where he laments the power of his inner demon. Peter discovers a secret room filled with weapons and evidence of Lee's vendetta against Osborn. A recording reveals Lee believes becoming a monster.
Father would say I've lost the path of balance, and he could never understand.
Is the only way to fight one. While escaping a triggered trap, Peter bumps into Lee, who seems unfazed. Lee announces he's leaving town and departs, but Peter is attacked by homeless people under Lee's control. After subduing them, Peter informs Yuri about Lee's connection to Devil's Breath, a bioweapon created by Osborn. Peter updates Mary Jane and promises to meet her for dinner. However, Otto Octavius calls Peter to the lab. There, Peter learns of Otto's failed prosthetics and his growing animosity toward Osborn. Otto shares their history, former friends and lab partners, now divided by ethics. After fixing the prosthetics,
I think we did it.
Otto plans to build a neural interface, with Peter volunteering to help despite Otto's financial struggles. Peter heads to Mary Jane's apartment for dinner. She recounts her own investigation at Lee's property, where she discovered military-grade equipment, a project involving Tombstone, and a GPS tracker. Over chicken curry, they discuss teaming up as partners. An alert about Oscorp's CFO, Charles Standish, interrupts their dinner, sending Spider-Man on another mission. At Standish's penthouse, Spider-Man saves him from the inner demons. Standish reveals the demons sought financial records on Devil's Breath, a secret Oscorp project Norman Osborn has funded for years. Before more details emerge, a helicopter attack forces Spider-Man to save Standish in a daring elevator rescue. Spider-Man informs Yuri about Standish and updates Mary Jane, who digs into Dr. Isaac Delaney, another key figure in Oscorp's payroll. Mary Jane finds a photo of Delaney and sends Spider-Man to Empire State University. There, Spider-Man finds Delaney, disguised as the Lizard, but the inner demons abduct him. Spider-Man follows, saving students along the way. Confronting Lee, Spider-Man watches him transform into Mr. Negative, using his powers to extract Delaney's knowledge about Morgan Michaels, a key Oscorp scientist. Lee leaves, and Delaney, under Lee's influence, tragically ends his own life. Spider-Man warns Yuri that Michaels is in danger. Yuri discovers Sable International is guarding Michaels, but they refuse to share his location. Mary Jane learns that Osborn hired Wilson Fisk to build a secret lab for Devil's Breath, and suspects Fisk retained blackmail material. Spider-Man infiltrates Oscorp's tower, overhearing Osborn discuss the Nio statue with Fisk. Accessing Norman's computer, Spider-Man uncovers Project GR-27, intended to cure diseases, but instead creating the deadly Devil's Breath. Morgan Michaels holds the only sample. Peter updates Mary Jane, who is already tracking Michaels to Central Park. On his way to meet her, Otto calls Peter about a breakthrough, unlocking the power of the mind. Mary Jane had a lead. Charles Standish might know where Morgan Michaels was being kept, but when she told Peter her plan to sneak into his location, he panicked. "That's too dangerous," Peter exclaimed, rushing to Central Park to stop her. When he arrived, his worst fear became reality. MJ was being held at gunpoint. Flashback to 15 minutes earlier, Mary Jane had slipped into the guarded area with her usual determination. Using her investigative skills, she captured photos of a screen showing that the inner demons were targeting anyone connected to Devil's Breath. She also found locations of their safe houses. When she found Standish, he mistook her for one of Martin Lee's people and pointed a gun at her. Thinking fast, MJ showed her reporter badge and calmed him down. Standish revealed Michaels was in the Bowery. He started to say more, something about Grand Central Station, but Peter burst in, startling him. Standish fell and knocked himself out. With Sable forces closing in, Peter whisked MJ away, but she scolded him later. "This is why we broke up, Peter. You treat me like I can't handle myself." The awkward conversation with MJ lingered as Peter swung across the city. Thankfully, Doctor Octavius called with a distraction. In the lab, Otto tested his neural interface, which allowed him to control his prosthetic arms seamlessly. But when Peter saw the test results, he grew concerned. The device could alter Otto's personality. Otto admitted he was racing against time. A neurological condition was stealing his motor functions. Peter promised to help, but worry shadowed his thoughts. Later, Peter checked in at the FEAST shelter, where Aunt May introduced him to Miles Morales. On his way there, Peter had saved Miles from a mugging, even giving the young man some fighting tips. At the shelter, Miles began his first day by helping residents and proving he had the heart of a hero, just like his dad, Jefferson Davis. The peace didn't last. Peter learned that Morgan Michaels was on the move with Sable International. He found their convoy just as the inner demons attacked, led by Mr. Negative himself. The chaos escalated quickly, and Spider-Man was pulled into a strange negative zone where Martin Lee taunted him, blaming Norman Osborn for the City Hall bombing. Spider-Man refused to join Lee's cause, leading to a fierce battle that ended with the demons escaping with Devil's Breath. Spider-Man barely stopped the runaway truck from causing more destruction, but Sable took Michaels into protective custody. Meanwhile, Mary Jane followed her lead to Grand Central Station, where she uncovered Martin Lee's plan to release Devil's Breath and frame Norman Osborn. She called Spider-Man for help. Together, they worked to disable drones and save hostages. Despite disagreements about their partnership, they defused a bomb and stopped Lee. Spider-Man chased Lee into the subway, defeating him and sending him to the raft. But trouble was far from over. Back at Otto's lab, Peter discovered Otto had already installed a neural interface. Though it worked flawlessly, the results showed a dangerous effect on Otto's mind. When Norman Osborn took credit for apprehending Martin Lee on the news, Otto's rage boiled over, and he smashed the TV with his mechanical arm. At the same time, Rikers Island erupted into chaos. Spider-Man rushed to help Yuri Watanabe contain the prison break. But things took a dark turn when Electro, Vulture, Rhino, Scorpion, and Mr. Negative ambushed Spider-Man. The Sinister Six, now led by Doctor Octopus, overpowered him. As Spider-Man struggled to recover, Octavius warned him to stay out of their way before throwing him off the raft. The villains had their orders, and the city would soon feel the consequences. It takes place in Times Square, where there's a large group of people with signs rooting for Norman Osborn and wanting to re-elect him for mayor. However, we see Doctor Octopus at the top of a tower in Times Square. He goes down, destroying a billboard of Norman on the way down. His arms then take the devil's breath and release it onto the city. Many people start coughing, and many people catch the plague. Dr. Octopus wears a gas mask so he doesn't get infected, and then he goes away. 24 hours later, Aunt May is working at VAST. However, she starts coughing up blood, and it is shown that she catch the plague and is sick. Mary Jane Watson reports live on the television and says that Norman Osborn has claimed Spider-Man a fugitive and blames him for the plague. Mary Jane mentions that there is no evidence that Spider-Man was the reason for the plague, and that Norman is just deflecting blame. She also says that the devil's breath originated in an Oscorp lab in Manhattan. Norman tells his assistant to turn off the TV, and then he looks outside the window. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is on a rooftop in the city when Yuri Watanabe calls him. Yuri says that she took him to the hospital and the doctor said that he still had 14 broken bones. Spider-Man declares that he still has 192 non-broken ones, and that he needs to get back to work. Yuri also tells him that Sable International have labeled him as a priority target, and that they will try to hunt Spider-Man down. Yuri also tells him that there are prisoner camps and Sable outposts throughout the city. Spider-Man says that he will take the city back and stop them. Yuri calls Spider-Man requesting urgent help for her officers. She then requests Spider-Man take out either Rhino or Electro. On the way there, Aunt May calls to tell Spider-Man that men from Rikers are at the VAST's sister office, the Veterans Center, ransacking it and demanding supplies. After dealing with the precincts, a panicked Mary Jane Watson calls and says, "It is urgent, Spider-Man. Get to the Veterans Center." The convicts set the building ablaze, trapping Miles Morales and Aunt May inside. Inside, Spider-Man finds Miles and May trapped on a collapsing floor, using his webbing to hold it in place. He cannot quite make it to the open window, but Mary Jane appears, coming inside to push against a beam that falls, closing the gap. Aunt May manages to get to safety, but not Miles as the floor shifts. Spider-Man's webbing unlatches just as Miles jumps, and Mary Jane helps him to her side. Just then, the floor above collapses onto Spider-Man. He manages to get off a shot, but it does not stick to anything. Miles manages to grab it, and then he and Mary Jane pull Spider-Man to safety. After, Mary Jane and Spider-Man reconcile. Mary Jane says she is happy to have rescued him, as it is hard for her to always be the one to be saved. Spider-Man enlists both Mary Jane and Miles for aid. Mary Jane to track down an antidote for the devil's breath, and Miles to keep an eye and ear open at VAST. Yuri calls Spider-Man to let him know the department cannot do a forensic sweep of Times Square because everyone is sick. There, Spider-Man follows a dispersal trial into Doctor Octopus's lair. At the lair, Spider-Man uncovers more of Otto's hatred for Norman Osborn and the origins of the Sinister Six group, as Otto Octavius made promises to them in exchange for their help, while Martin Lee already shared Otto's distaste of Osborn. He has also been searching for weakness to the armor worn by Sable International and has left messages for his crew. One of them is for Scorpion about a reservoir job. Spider-Man sees a map of where each major villain has been assigned to strike at Oscorp. Mr. Negative will go after the anti-serum for Devil's Breath using Icarus. Searching the lair further reveals that Icarus itself is just a ruse, as Otto has left behind a case full of explosive that Spider-Man trips upon opening. Spider-Man escapes via a vent, only to be captured by Vulture and hauled across the city to awaiting Electro. Spider-Man defeats them both. Dr. Octopus over the phone tells Spider-Man that if he truly wanted to help the city, he would expose Osborn's crimes, and promised he would have restored New York's power once he was done with Osborn. Spider-Man tells Otto he is sick and needs help, then leaves to take a quick nap to recover. After his fight with Electro and Vulture, Spider-Man falls asleep from exhaustion on the rooftop, awakening the next morning. He calls Yuriko Watanabe to let her know that he is going after Scorpion at the city's reservoir, believing that New York City would never recover if they lost clean water. Upon arrival, Scorpion gets the drop on Spider-Man. Scorpion reveals he would prefer to kill Spider-Man, but that Doctor Octopus wants to torture him first. Scorpion then uses his stinger tail to inject Spider-Man with poison. This gives Spider-Man hallucinations of Scorpion and of Otto Octavius, telling Peter that he is a failure, while Peter moves around the city to put together an antidote. Once successful, Spider-Man finds himself back in the lab, having taken the antidote, and in his undies. With Scorpion's poison wearing off, Peter Parker decides it is a good time to visit Aunt May. Once there, she appears to be sick.
Let me go.
Peter attempts to contact Miles Morales, who has been sent to retrieve more medical supplies from the relief center. Miles, at the waterfront, steals antibiotics from convicts. After successfully finding the amoxicillin he was looking for, Rhino bursts on the scene, knocking out the Sable International soldiers and interrogating them about their supply routes. Scorpion arrives to assist with the questioning. When he stabs one of the men with his tail, Miles runs, knocking over a toolbox in his haste. Once Miles escapes, he runs into some escaped convicts who are trying to mug a man. He intervenes, fighting one of them. After hearing from Miles Morales following his own encounter with Rhino at the relief center, Spider-Man contacts Yuriko Watanabe and lets her know that Rhino is targeting relief centers throughout the city. She directs him to where Rhino likely is, Harlem. While traveling there, Mary Jane Watson calls Spider-Man had simpler lives, Spider-Man reassuring her that their work is important so the next generation can enjoy the simpler lives they had. Spider-Man battles the two there. After the battle, Scorpion taunts Rhino a little too much, and Rhino charges him. Spider-Man takes advantage of the situation and seals them both inside a storage container with his webbing. Spider-Man calls Yuri to inform her. Mary Jane Watson calls Peter Parker to let him know she has not found the location of the Devil's Breath lab. As it was not in the city, state, or federal databases, she suspects the lab is off the books and that its location may be in Norman Osborn's penthouse. With it full of Sable International soldiers, she thinks she has a better chance of sneaking in and avoiding a firefight than Spider-Man. He agrees to wait outside in case she needs backup. Mary Jane sneaks in through the elevator just as Silver Sable and Norman Osborn exit. In the penthouse, Mary Jane accesses a secret lab, then witnesses some records and discovers the truth of Mr. Negative's origin, that Norman and Otto were working on GR-27, Devil's Breath, some time ago, and Norman rushed ahead with human trials by giving a young Martin Lee the serum when his parents came in for a consultation. Lee exhibits his trademark negative abilities, appearing to kill both his parents. Mary Jane begins downloading the information, but is startled by a container that holds a jumping bioengineered spider, causing one of the nearby glass containers to shatter, releasing the spider but also alerting Silver Sable. As Sable leaves, Mary Jane sneaks out to the balcony. As she takes out the last guard there, he fires a round, alerting the other soldiers. With no other recourse, and with Silver Sable and her men approaching, she leaps off the edge to be caught by Spider-Man below. Spider-Man drops her at the FEAST shelter as she fills him in on Harry's sickness and the origin of Mr. Negative, also giving him the location of the Devil's Breath lab. Spider-Man heads off to retrieve the anti-serum. Along the way, Spider-Man calls Yuriko Watanabe to tell her he is finding the cure. Yuri then informs him that a helicopter just went down at the address of the secret lab. Mr. Negative has captured Norman, and his inner demons patrol the ground and rooftops outside. Spider-Man defeats them. Sable International troops arrive and attack Spider-Man. At the culmination of the fight, Silver Sable appears. Sable threatens to kill Spider-Man for his damage to her men and her client, but listening to his logic, she finally decides that they are better off working together rather than against each other, and agrees to a temporary truce until Norman is secure. She allows him into the building, but when inner demons show up outside, she stays behind to fend them off, leaving him to follow Lee's trail through the building. After reaching Lee, Lee gets the jump on Spider-Man as he enters the lower level, and Lee sends Spider-Man to a negative zone to try and convince him again. When Spider-Man exits, Norman is screaming in the other room. Dr. Morgan Michaels then gives Lee the only sample of an anti-serum developed against Devil's Breath, and Lee tortures Osborn before Spider-Man interrupts and battles him. Spider-Man tries to urge Lee that Osborn deserves true justice, which will not happen if Lee continues to be violent, though Lee is undeterred. Upon Lee's defeat, Doctor Octopus enters the room. Via cutscene, he fights Spider-Man and knocks him out, taking the anti-serum for himself. He then takes Norman and heads out of the building. Silver Sable rushes in moments later to find Spider-Man on the floor, mortally wounded. Sable and Dr. Michaels take him to FEAST, where Dr. Michaels works to save his life. Though he is saved, Spider-Man insists on finding the anti-serum before resting, especially when he learns Aunt May is sick and in bed from the Devil's Breath. Mary Jane insists he uses brains to defeat Otto, rather than relying solely on his spider powers. At the scene's end, a spider from Osborn's lab that hitched a ride on Mary Jane's coat bites Miles Morales. On the way to the lab at Octavius Industries, Silver Sable calls to let Spider-Man know she is leaving the city, having doubts as to her chosen life, but that her soldiers will remain behind. With no time left, Mary Jane informs via phone call that May Parker's condition is worsening because of being infected by Devil's Breath. Even worse, Yuriko Watanabe and most of the police officers are infected by Devil's Breath, Yuri staying with her mother, who is also infected. Once in the lab, Peter creates a suit designed specifically to defeat Doctor Octopus, the anti-Ock suit. After suiting up, an incoming news alert lets him know where Octopus has kidnapped Norman and climbed into the tower. There, Dr. Octopus climbs up the Oscorp's tower, attempting to force the mayor into admitting his failings. When Norman refuses, Octopus drops him. Spider-Man manages to catch Norman in time, allowing him to flee before approaching Octopus on the roof. He makes one last-ditch effort to dissuade Otto, but he fails, leading them to fight. After Peter rips out Otto's neural interface, Otto reveals that he knew Spider-Man was Peter all along. The two fight, and the tower is ripped free from the roof to send them both tumbling over at the edge. The two fight on the side of the tower. When Octopus stabs him with an arm, Spider-Man pulls the arm in closer, taking advantage of the moment to rip the interface free again. Otto falls, and Spider-Man follows to retrieve the anti-serum. They crash into the side of the tower and into a room, where Otto is unable to move. Otto first accuses Peter of betrayal, but Peter responds that Otto's willpower and conscience made him the hero that he wanted to be. Though Otto then attempts to convince Spider-Man that his actions were all the result of the interface, Spider-Man takes the anti-serum and turns away, letting the authorities take him in. With the anti-serum secured, Dr. Morgan Michaels informs Spider-Man that there's only enough for one dose. Producing more will take hours. Peter faces an impossible choice: save his dying Aunt May, or use the serum to protect the entire city. Peter visits May in her final moments, where she reveals she's known his secret identity all along. "Ben would be so proud of you," she whispers, her voice full of love. Tearfully, Peter makes the hardest decision of his life, letting May go. Her last words reassure him it was the right thing to do. The next day, with Tricorp's help, the Devil's Breath vaccine is mass-produced and distributed across the city. Miles Morales and his mother, Rio, assist in the effort. Later, Peter and his friends attend May's funeral, where she is laid to rest beside Uncle Ben. Meanwhile, Sable forces escort Otto Octavius to the raft, his plans defeated. 3 months later, Peter Parker, searching for a new job, reconciles with Mary Jane Watson, now an associate editor at the Daily Bugle. The two rekindle their romance, taking things one step at a time. While temporarily staying at Miles's apartment, Peter is shocked when Miles reveals his newfound powers from a spider bite. In return, Peter reveals his identity as Spider-Man, solidifying their bond as mentor and protege. Post-credits scene, Norman Osborn returns to his secret lab, where he reveals his son Harry, suspended in a tank and bonded to the Venom symbiote. The symbiote is the only thing keeping Harry's inherited illness at bay. As Norman vows to find a cure, the symbiote stirs ominously, hinting at the chaos to come.
I will.